Okay, so now we're going to open it up for questions. And so now we'll also introduce Dr. Pat Limber, who is the one that developed all the cliff modeling. And so for background on Pat, he is a research fellow with he's a good feller, with the USGS Pacific Coastal and Marine Science Center in Santa Cruz. He's been developing an approach for predicting multi-decadal cliff retreat due to climate change, this work that we've just been talking about. His expertise lies in large, long-term coastal evolution, beach and sea cliff dynamics. I'm kind of like that mouse. My voice is going nuts. Nonlinear dynamics and coastal management. Prior to USGS, he was a postdoc with Dr. Pete Adams at the University of Florida. He received his BA in environmental science from SUNY Purchase on the East Coast and his MS in earth science from UC Santa Cruz and his PhD in earth and ocean sciences from Duke University. So as you guys are all digesting that information, when you registered for this, you asked some questions. So we went through those and lumped the ones that came up the most frequently. And so we'll go through those. We picked 3 of those. We'll go through those, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions. And then I think we have about 25 minutes, so probably till about 10:10. And we'll get the hook from Danny when it's time to move on. So, Lee, we'll start with you. One of the questions that we get a lot is, how does the Cosmos modeling relate to the FEMA modeling, specifically the 100-year storm? So, can you describe the difference between the 2 methodologies? And
actually did prepare a slide or 2. Let's see if you go back. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So, very broad overview, but so for the models, the underlying models are a bit different than the approach. So FEMA firm, they use GROW for their waves, offshore waves. They use wave transformation from Scripps Institution of Oceanography and Mike 21 WAFIS, and they use an analytical run-up model. For us, as Cosmos, we use as listed up there, which I already talked about. Also, on the second panel there, in methods, the flood protection structures are identified as failing or not failing on the FEMA firm. For us, we include long-term morphodynamic change, but we assume that the flood protection structures remain in place where they are today. And there's one more slide. The biggest difference, though, is the difference between the forcing. So FEMA, they look at a hindcast. They look at 50 years of hindcast and then pick out the 100-year event from that. We do the GCMs, the global climate models, and we project forward for 100 years. And that is the biggest difference. So the 100-year storm in FEMA is not actually the same 100-year storm that we use in Cosmos.
thank you. And then another question that we got a lot was about how armoring was incorporated into the modeling. And so, Pat, you worked most closely with the armoring information. So if you can get some words about that.
Sure. So since the phase 1 rollout of Cosmos last year, we've gotten a ton of feedback and questions and input about coastal armoring and how we included it in the Cosmos results. So for this year, for phase 2, we drew on a few different data sources to better cover the array of coastal structures across Southern California. So we pulled from a California Coastal Commission database. We took input from local communities on where their armoring is. We also use aerial photography to identify spots where armoring is. And as Michael pointed out, there are 2 scenarios for the long-term shoreline change and bluff retreat components of Cosmos. One is to hold the line, which assumes that the armoring will be maintained and will be holding the shoreline in place in perpetuity. And then we did a let it go scenario, which will give you an idea of how the shoreline and the cliffs will behave if that armor was pulled out. If there's any more questions on that, I can answer those later.
Thank you. You clearly don't have kids yet, because if you do, you'd never say let it go. I won't sing. Okay. Lee, another question that we get. I don't know, you had a slide about the fluvial impacts, inputs, so I don't know. Maybe we'll leave it there because you did talk about that, and then if there are questions from the audience, we can dive into more details about that. And then just, Michael, there were a lot of questions about how to access the information, which I think you obviously just showed. And so, we have the beta up, and what's the kind of the timing for all the parts and pieces that still need to get in there?
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, I mean, when I say the paint is wet, these guys are seeing this stuff in our tool for the first time probably today. So this is, this is just, sure, talk about working up to the wire. So definitely we have, there's a couple of specific data sets that are missing. The report stuff we got to fix. So there's like a whole bunch of we have to clean up and get things done for San Diego. Then the next thing after that is we've got the rest of Southern California to integrate in. Just as a quick step back, as part of this project, we're also going to be doing user interface redesign, and based on the learnings we've had over the past 5 or 6 years working with a lot of people like yourselves, mostly in Northern California. But their feedback has given us now we can look at the tool and say, gosh, it would be much better if we had built it this way or designed things in this other way. So we will we've now got a lot of examples of people actually doing things on the ground, which is gold to the people who are coming and asking, how do I get involved and how do I get going with this? So learning from folks like yourselves will be immensely valuable, and so we really want to highlight that much more prominently in the tool next time. So we will be redesigning the tool as well. So we originally were going to do that first before putting the results in, but given the timing of this workshop, we flipped it around and we said, let's get the results into the current version of the tool so that you guys could have actually ready access in time for this particular workshop. So we'll be looking at similar kinds of timing for LA and up through to point conception. So we're hopefully, knocking on wood, that by springtime of this next calendar year, everything will be completely finished. So the tool will continue to be live. We will continue to communicate with all of you and through all the partners so you guys are aware of where we are in our development.
Okay, and we'll open it up now, but just a couple words on that. So I also want to introduce Maya Hayden, Dr. Maya Hayden, who is based up in Petaluma with Michael's group. They've been doing a lot of the work with the on-the-ground communities up there, so they have a lot of experience dealing with the questions that you probably will ask as you do that. So through me or through Laura and Danny, we can get you access to these folks, or you can contact them directly, and they can probably answer a question that you have that we who are just beginning to use this might not know. And then I also wanted to highlight, my role as an oceanographer, but my main job is to be helping communities such as yourselves understand this information and utilize it. So I'm always a resource. But then we also have our partners, Laura and Danny, who you know and love and have been working with them. They are available to you. And then, Alyssa, I'm going to put you on the spot. Alyssa Newton-Mann from Sea Grant, which is based up in LA, but I was previously with Sea Grant and still feel I'm part of it. But USC Sea Grant is working in all of Southern California to help promote the results and help understand what is there. So there are a lot of resources here to help you digest this information, utilize it appropriately, and we really hope that you will take advantage of that. So, in the back, Dr. USGS back there, another USGS member. Is the flood depth?
You're talking about the flood elevation data. Yeah. So one of the things that we're looking at because we now have flood elevation data for all the scenarios, and we also got that for the Northern California as well, and we're looking at incorporating that into that report so that you would get a picture across all the scenarios of flood elevation. You're talking about the elevation of the surface of the water.
What one could do is download the water elevation data from two different scenarios and subtract them out to get your contours of net change. So you could do that. And perhaps duration would be useful too for estimating infiltration into groundwater. I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And just to add to that, a member of our group, Dan Hoover, has done some initial work looking at the intersection of sea level rise and groundwater. And up and down the coast, I think there's 3 sites. I don't remember if there's one in San Diego or not, but I don't know if that paper is up there, but we can make sure it's up on OCOF. And then, yeah, we're starting to talk with your group. So Wes is from the California Water Science Center that's based here in San Diego. And so we're starting to have this conversation of how we can use the Cosmos information with your groundwater modeling and stormwater modeling to link all of this. Yeah. Oh, sure. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, so I think perhaps the tool that Michael showed that shows the scenario range is where you want to go. I mean, the guidance is always being updated. The state of California is in the process of updating their guidance. And so that tool shows you saw on there the IPCC sort of is really lagging behind some of the other scenarios. And right now sort of the accepted guidance is the National Research Council. And that gives you that good band. I think that if you're working in that constrained area, you're sort of in the accepted science and acknowledged science, at least in this state. And then the 5-meter scenario we put in there because there's this growing body of research on the ice sheets and what's going to happen there. And you know, believe it or not, there are some communities that really want to look that far out. And so that helps provide sort of your backstop, right? Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So sorry. Let me redo the question from the beginning. Was can you provide some constraints on what scenarios to choose? And then now your question is, because we don't put management scenarios in, can we comment on how communities can deal with that? And you can imagine that there's any number of scenarios. And so one of the really important things with this model, with Climate Central, with NOAA, with whoever your favorite modeler is that it's a tool. And that community dialogue is the most critical. This is a way to start the conversation. It's not the end of the conversation, right? And so that's going to be this community visioning process that has to happen in each community to understand. Use this information to start the conversation, and then you come together to make your decisions as a community. Laura?
No, the tool that I was, let's see, is it still up? Oh, it would be over here. Let's see. Yeah. Oops. Here we go. And in this, yeah, what the tool gives you is it will map those scenarios to a time. So the NRC would say that there is a projection. So what we did was we calibrated the tool to showing the Cosmos projections, and then we said, okay, what does NRCS project for that particular year, like for 2100? We then back calculated the years between 2100 and 2010 to generate this set of graphs, so that when you're looking, so the projections don't match up exactly, or the range of projections for NRC, like here is from 30 to 124 centimeters. You have, given that that's a range, that then at least tells you should be looking at somewhere between 50 and 125 centimeters of sea level rise to map to that. But it is, there's not this tool does not say, because you're interested in 2080, therefore use 75 centimeters. And that is something we definitely are trying to just let people see, what does the best available science tell us? And the best available science is uncertain right now. So if you're planning, and again, it's very different if you're planning for that parking lot versus you're planning for a much more highly valued piece of infrastructure, or human lives are at stake. I mean, there's a lot that you will plan very differently, and you will want to calibrate yourself to how much extreme and how much risk are you willing to take in these scenarios.
Do you want? I can say something, but I don't want to talk too much.
Fine.
Would you have, if you want to talk on the side? Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's it right there. It's the triggers. And so we worked with the city of Imperial Beach, where we looked at the same kind of. We had dates because people that planners or whomever. I'm not just picking on planners, but people are used to wanting to have a date. Sorry, do I have to repeat what the question was? Or okay, all right. But And so there's that pathway, but then there's also the pathway of like, okay, so I'm going to pick a management that I have to do. Let's say it's, I won't use nourishing beaches, but let's say it's, well, I will because it's just an easy one, and I know that's a very tough political issue here. But let's say you have to nourish your beets once every 10 years. It's going to cost you X dollars. And so you can develop sort of your planning process to say, okay, once that is, I have to nourish every 2 years, that's going to be too expensive, so I'm going to start down the path of thinking about what my other options are. In Europe, they call it adaptive pathways. Here, the term that's been thrown around a lot is triggers, and I think that would be a very sort of safe sort of way to go forward, because then you're basing it on stuff that you can measure and see versus projections and whatever political context is behind those. So I think that's absolutely the most perfect way to approach it, yeah. Laura, Danny, did you want to say something along those lines? Because you've been working with the communities here, so. Great. We can take one last question. Kimberly. Great question. So to repeat the question, in case it wasn't heard, was how can we have some real-time validation of the modeling results? Is that about sum it up? Okay.
Well, so let me back step a little bit. We validated the model against measurements. So the January 2010 storm was one of the storms that we focused upon. And we compared those, we ran the model system and compared to the gauges in Los Angeles and San Diego, La Jolla, and Santa Barbara. And it did quite well, if I may say so. As well, we are also doing an IFSAR, not IFSAR, I'm sorry. We're doing overpass flights to capture high events, and we're trying to sync those with storms that are that will be occurring. And we've been working on that for a couple of years to try and get flooding so that we can get two-dimensional maps, because what we've done so far has been looking at points and comparing the points. And that's all we can do at this point because we don't have so much two-dimensional flooding patterns that we can try to simulate. So we're working on that, and that we hope that will happen very soon in this season. As far as real-time, that would real-time validations, that would be way off in the future because we are looking at future coastal storms. So if we can possibly some years ahead look at annual return rates, including, if we think that is now then including some of the climate change effects, then we can go back and compare to those and run that particular scenario, and compare to the results that we do have presently.
Yeah, and if I could add to that as well. So our group does in 4 locations. We look at beach change twice a year in a couple of locations to help also understand just the sediment dynamics. So there's that. But there's also some local scale work. I'm sure you're all familiar with Dr. Timu Galeen, who does a lot of the fine scale measurements. So there are a lot of people that are going out and doing beach measurements that can help validate some of the shore and the beach projections. But then there's also the Community Science Initiative, Urban Tides, and the California King Tides. So are you talking about the SAR flights? Okay, so we just had a SAR flight on Monday, yeah, and so that was an amazing opportunity because led through USCC. Is Holly here? Did she make it? Okay, so the communications manager at USCC Grant has led this initiative throughout Southern California, where on this day we had this blitz where we had the SAR flight go out, and we got, I think, like 300 pictures between Santa Barbara to here of people going out and shooting that high tide. And all of those pictures are going to get fed back to another one of our team members, Andy O'Neill, who then pulls the high water mark. And based on the tide, we can sort of, do these tables where we can think about what that corresponds to in terms of a storm and a sea level rise scenario. And we're trying to build this database of photographs to help validate our model. Of course, we're not in the future. We're not at 25 centimeters with a 20-year storm on January 6th. But we can estimate these water levels, match it up to what our projections are, see what these pictures are showing us, and then do some of that ground truthing. And so that's a way that everybody in the room here can be involved, and we welcome as many pictures as we can get. And also I know Sarah Giddings from Scripps is using that from the other perspective to look at erosion. So it's not just going out with the high tides, it's also going out when there's erosion. So whatever pictures you can get, there are people that will take that and use it to try to validate what we're doing across the board. So thank you for that. It's a great question. Thank you. Yeah. We can bring it up. Well, we can show it to you in a break, but yeah, we'll. Yeah, and you can do it through your phone, you can do it through a computer, or you can do it old-fashioned with a piece of paper, writing down your lat long, clicking your picture. You can take a picture with a camera, bring it to your computer, upload it. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you guys to get that information to all of us. I think we're going to wrap this part up and then turn to some case studies, right? Great. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you to all of our panelists, and particularly to Point Blue, Michael and Maya, because as they said, they specifically expedited getting all the San Diego results up on the OCOF viewer for us, so we are the first in Southern California to be privileged enough to have that tool, so thank you to both of you. So I'm going to hand it off to Laura Engman from the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative, and she is going to moderate our second session of the day.
I'm trying to think. I'm going to go ahead and go through, well, since we're having a mass exodus to use the restroom, I'm actually going to bring the panelists up here, give whoever needs a restroom break if you had too much coffee, and do another warning for anyone that might have parked in the 2-hour slot. Your 2 hours are probably coming up, and you will get towed, so you do need to go into the pay lot next door, actually get a ticket and pay so that you don't get towed. I would hate that to happen. So why don't we take a few minutes? I'll bring my panelists up. Perfect.